Hey there, and welcome to today's webinar, Making Shelf-Stable Sauces, Dressings, and Beverages. This is part of our Food Safety Friday webinar series, and as always, the recordings are up on our YouTube channel, which you can see in the web address on your upper right-hand screen. Also, if you'd like to join us for our future webinars, you can always sign up and join us live to have a chance to ask questions or just see what we're up to. You can do that by scanning that QR code there and accessing our registration site. So let's go ahead and begin. My name is Wendy White, and I'm the food scientist here at Georgia MEP. Prior to joining Georgia Tech about 6-7 years ago, I spent 17 years in the food manufacturing industry, so I've been where you are now, and I understand the challenges that you're facing, especially when it comes to food safety and regulatory compliance. So today we're going to go through the wonderful world of acidified foods. We're going to understand how you make safe, shelf-stable, that's room temperature, sauces, dressings, and beverages. We're then going to talk about acidified foods and understand how you can work with a process authority to get your process filing with FDA so that you can safely make these shelf-stable foods yourself. So let's talk about acidified foods. Now, a couple quick definitions. I'm going to be referring to food products as liquid products in this webinar. And what I mean by liquid products is things like sauces, dressings, and different kinds of beverages. The other terms we're going to be talking about quite a lot is pH. That's a measure of acidity, like vinegar, and also alkaline foods like mushrooms. And you can see right here, I have a pH scale so you can kind of see where different foods fall in that scale. The other attribute that I'm going to be talking about is water activity. Now, water activity is the measure of available water that pathogens can use in foods and beverages. Now, the reason why we don't talk about water moisture is if I have a glass of salty water and the same exact glass of regular water, they both have the same amount of percent moisture, but bacteria and pathogens can live in the regular water a lot better than the salty water, and that's because the regular water has a higher water activity. And you can see the scale here in the yellow, different foods and their water activity. So the higher the water activity, the more likely and easily that pathogens can grow and live. And the scale usually is 1.0, which is the water activity of plain water, all the way down to maybe 0.01. All right, couple more definitions. An acid food are foods and beverages that have a natural pH of 4.6 or below. A low acid food is a food or beverage other than alcoholic beverages that have a finished equilibrium pH of greater than 4.6 and a water activity of above 0.85. Now, just to complicate things further, acidified foods are when a low acid food, you take a low acid food and you add acid to it. For instance, salsa is a good example. And so you have to be really careful and do some special things with these acidified foods. Now, before we really get into things, if these regulations that I'm going to talk about are only for shelf-stable products or products that you want to store and distribute at room temperature. If you're refrigerating your sauce, dressing, or beverage, you don't have to worry about these regulations. You just follow normal regulations. All right, so why do we call things acidified foods and not acid foods? It's because liquid products are really complicated, especially sauces and dressings. And oftentimes they will have different ingredients with different pHs. And a lot of times they'll have chunks in them, chunks of fruits or vegetables. And a lot of times those items have a lower pH or have a higher pH. And so bacteria and pathogens could still grow and live inside of those high pH items. Now, the acid, like the vinegar in a sauce, might not be able to penetrate into those pieces, like if it's an onion pieces inside of a barbecue sauce. And the pathogens can grow inside of those pieces. Now, there is precedent. We have to worry about this because we've had many recalls associated with shelf-stable sauces, dressings, and beverages. So definitely something to be cautious about. And that's why the FDA has special regulations for these products. All right, let's talk about water activity a little bit more. Pathogens need access to water in order to survive. You can lower water activity by dehydrating or adding things like salt and sugar. And so this is why beef jerky is usually safer than raw beef because it has a lower water activity or less water for bacteria and pathogens to use. Now, refrigeration is an important safety control, and bacteria normally stop growing at temperatures less than 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you make a refrigerated product, you do not have to do a special FDA process filing for your acidified food. So let's talk about using acid in order to kill pathogens. Bacteria usually stop growing at a pH of less than 4.6, but sauces and dressings and beverage often contain low acid ingredients or higher pH things, like salsa. The acid might not be able to penetrate those pieces, and that could lead to pathogen growth. Now, let's talk about using heat to kill pathogens. The hot fill and hold method is often used with shelf-stable sauces, dressings, beverages because thermal processes like cooking, boiling, roasting can effectively kill pathogens. So basically you would cook your product for a certain time and temperature, fill those containers immediately, close the lid, and then set that beverage or set that product on its side so the hot liquid can sanitize all of the inner surfaces of the bottle or package that you're using. And you can see here on the right, there have been several studies to prove that this is effective in killing pathogens. Now, here are the FDA acidified foods regulations. 21 CFR 110 is the general regulation for current good manufacturing practices for food safety. 21 CFR 113 is thermal processing of low acid foods in hermetically sealed containers. So when I'm talking about a low acid food, I'm talking about something that doesn't have a lot of acid like canned beef stew. Now, the regulation that probably all of y'all are interested in is 21 CFR 114, and that's the acidified foods regulation. So those are going to regulate shelf-stable acidified foods like salsas, sauces, dressings, and some beverages. Now, non-refrigerated acidified foods must be made under what's called a scheduled process so that the pathogens won't grow in that room temperature storage. Now, the scheduled process has to be recognized by a process authority. So a process authority is somebody that is going to tell you what times, temperatures, pHs are going to be safe to process your foods under. Acidified foods will be manufactured, processed, packaged so that the equilibrium pH or final pH of all those ingredients together is less than or equal to 4.6 within a scheduled time. All right, so this is a little bit different than commercial sterility, which is a process using specialized equipment so that you can store any kind of foods on the shelf without refrigeration. Aseptic processing and packaging is also a different term, which is filling commercially sterilized products in pre-sterilized containers. Oftentimes, this needs very special equipment as well. And so an example of this might be canning. All right, so how do you know what processing method to use? You must contact a process authority. And let me tell you how to find one. The FDA has a list of process authorities under this website at the top, afdo.org. There are several process authorities that we've been working with. UGA has some, and also NC State. Now, a process authority is usually a scientist that has access to lab equipment and is a specialist in these acidified foods. What they'll do is they will examine your recipe. They might test your product for pH, water activity, Brix, which is the sugars. Then they'll look at your processing steps, your packaging, your controls, and your storage. So for every single recipe and different type of packaging type, all of those things must be tested separately. And then they'll give you what's called a letter of process approval that will tell you for that specific recipe and packaging exactly what you need to do to process it safely. So you can store it and distribute it at shelf-stable room temperature. You also need to attend a better process control school, and UGA has an excellent one. So check out their website. All right, what do these process letters look like? Here are a couple screenshots from some process letters. So this one says that you need to cook this product at least 207 degrees Fahrenheit for 27 minutes, then hot fill jars. You would use FDA form 254-1E for your process filing. So usually that's the information that your process authority will tell you. And then you have to take that information and go to the FDA website to register it. All right, here's how you do that. The FDA requires that you register a separate process filing for each type of recipe and packaging type or size. You must refile this if there's a change to the recipe, no matter how small, a change to the packaging size or the type of packaging, like if you go from plastic bottles to glass bottles or vice versa, you change your processing step in some way, or you move to a new location. Anytime any of those things happen, you have to refile your process. So if you're making barbecue sauces and you have 3 different recipes, with 2 different sizes each, then you'd have to do 6 total process filings. All right, make sure that you use the correct FDA process filing form. If you're making an acidified food, most likely you're going to use form 2541E. And you'll of course submit a separate form for each type of product, each recipe type, and also each different size or type of packaging that you use. And here's an example of that form 2541E here to the right. All right, a couple final thoughts before we finish. When you're first starting out making liquid products, that's sauces, dressings, beverages, you might really want to consider storing and distributing in under refrigerated conditions. It's going to be cheaper and easier for you, and then you're going to have time to work out your recipe. It's a little more flexible. Make sure if you are going to store and ship these things under shelf stable or room temperature conditions and you want to go through with the process filing, make sure that you've perfected your recipe, because if you change your recipe, you're going to have to go back to your process authority, get a new letter, and then refile with the FDA. And remember that good manufacturing practices like cleaning and good product handling is always vital to making a safe food. And with that, we're going to let you go. Please reach out to our website if you're interested in learning more at georgiamep.org. And you can always reach out to me. You can scan this QR code here with your camera phone, and you can reach out to me via phone or email. Anything that I can do to help. So I'm going to end by telling you a quick couple of things about my department and the resources that we can offer all Georgia manufacturers. So we're the Georgia Manufacturing Extension Partnership, and we're the Extension Outreach branch of Georgia Tech. So our mission is to help all Georgia manufacturers. My specialty is food and beverage manufacturers because that's where I came from. That's my history, and I love working with my food and beverage companies. Of course, food safety is the most important thing we do here at Georgia MEP, but we do a ton of other things. Everything from strategy and leadership training, supply chain management, sustainability and energy, Lean Six Sigma, process improvement, cybersecurity, automation, HR, so many other things. So if you're interested in some of our other services, you can take out your camera, you can scan this QR code, and it'll take you to our regional managers, which are employees that live throughout Georgia and can specifically help you find resources in your specific region. And we'd love to keep in touch with you. If you want to sign up for one of our newsletters, we have 3 of them. My favorite, of course, is the quarterly food and beverage newsletter. That's the QR code here on the right. But the regular Georgia MEP newsletter is a monthly newsletter. That's in the middle. And then to the left is our worker safety newsletter. That's also quarterly. And that is done by our sister department, which is the SHE's group, the Safety, Health, and Environmental Services. So if you're looking for help complying with OSHA regulations, those are those worker safety regulations, the SHE's group are experts, and they have a lot of training and support services in that regard. And with that, I'll end. Thank you so much, and please check out our YouTube channel for additional webinars. Bye, y'all.